So guess a number. It's pretty straightforward as far as everyone's played the game. Like guess a number between 1 and 10. Guess a number between 1 and 100. And you have to like guess higher, lower, and try to guess the correct answer. So with that, we kind of give you a file structure with the app.js, index HTML, and some styles. But again, this is a little more open, but it's just kind of, you have to create a guess a number game. It's pretty fun. But let's go ahead and fork that over to your personal GitHub. So my personal GitHub, Tom Preet, HTML number guessing game. And it's, there we go. So I'm in Tom Preet HTML number guessing game. And now I'm going to clone this down on my local machine. And where did it go? There we go. So I'm in pop-up Platoon challenges. So I'm going to git clone, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit as well. There we go. And my computer is going really slow. All right. So right here we have the HTML number guessing game. I'm going to CD into it, HTML number guessing game. And then I'm going to open this up into a new VS Code window. Hopefully it loads and doesn't freeze. All right. Let's take a look at what they want us to do. Your HTML file has play a number guessing game. Our JavaScript file, our CSS file. Let's just go ahead and inspect those. So I'm going to open up HTML. I got my styles that has some default styling and my app.js. All right. So let's go ahead and let's see if I can open up my JavaScript or my HTML file. Open, was it index.html? All right, cool. So I've got, let's zoom in so we can kind of see it a little bit better. So here's my HTML file. Let's go ahead and split app.js. So we have it two separate windows. All right. So I've got my HTML file. So let's go ahead and link my styles, my style sheets, and my app.js file in here. So inside the head of the HTML, I think of like the HTML document as like a body, or I'm sorry, as like a person. So in the head, all the kind of like logic goes there. Anything that's loaded in there, it's kind of like the brains of the HTML. That's where you're going to load your script tags. Any outside resources should go in the head of your HTML document. So in here, I'm going to load my CSS file. We already have using the link tag, relationship, style sheet, and the path to that is styles.css. So if I save that and I come back here to this, and if I refresh it, notice how the styles apply that are in my styles, my CSS file. I've got font, text align. So everything's going to be centered from the body downward. And I've got a font weight of 400 for the H1 tag. So here I've got H1 tag right there. And next I'm going to load my JavaScript. So I've got a script. I have this async defer. So it kind of waits for my HTML document to load or HTML file to load, and then it runs whatever script tags in here. So I'm going to load my app.js in there. And I can see whether or not that's loaded by opening up my DevTools, but typing Command Option I, and that opens up my DevTools. I could also right click and inspect, and then it also opens up that. But over up in my DevTools, I have this console. And if I refresh now, it should load my JavaScript file. You can see it says hello pop-up Platoon, and it's loading loaded from the app.js file on line 1. And I can look here, app.js file on line 1. It loads my console logs as hello Papa Platoon. Questions about loading your style sheets and loading your app.js file or any JavaScript file?
Can I see the process again for seeing the JS text in the inspect?
Yep. So I'm going to close that. So I can right click inspect and it opens up the developer tools. And in the developer tools, you have a bunch of tabs along the top: elements, console, source, network, performance, all this stuff you don't necessarily need to know right now. But inside the console tab is what JavaScript. It's just like a console where you can write JavaScript in here. So I can literally write JavaScript in here and execute it in here. So this is what is being loaded in my HTML file. And you can inspect these like sources. You can kind of see the files that's being loaded in here. Here's my index, app.js. You can actually see the code in here. Same with our styles. But that's just the source. In the consoles, what's actually being loaded, and you can see what's executed in my JavaScript. You're going to get really familiar with this console in the future. Any other questions? All right, so let's play a number guessing game. I'm going to keep this relatively simple. I'm not going to like do any crazy design or patterns or anything like that. I'm just going to, create. We've got this title here, the name of it, and let's go ahead and give some instructions. So I'm going to create another div that. Let's see, what should it be? I'm just going to create a paragraph tag that says just guess a number between 1 and 100, just so I give the player some direction as to what to type in. So guess a number between 1 and 100. Next, I'm just going to create another div. And I'm going to have an input. What does the input do? Let's just see what that looks like. So I have an input here. What do we want to add for the input? We can add the type, what should be typed in here. So we should have a text. I'm gonna, let's see, I'm gonna have a placeholder. Just give it an example of what to input. So like 50. And I'm going to give this an ID because I might want to target this. I'm just going to call it input number because that's specifically what this is. So if I refresh that, there we go. I've got an input number. There we go. Now I need a way to submit a number when I guess a number. So if I type 50, I'm going to create a button that says submit. So I'm just going to create another div and create a button, submit number. I want to be very explicit as to what this is actually submitting. So if I come down here, create that button, submit number, and then I refresh that, and I've got a submit number button right there. I'm going to add an ID to this as well, called submit number, just to keep things simple. So I might want to target that in the future. All right. Questions about adding an input, adding a button. I could have a form, but I'm just my design decision. I'm just going to create everything vanilla and extract and manipulate all these HTML elements via JavaScript. All right. So I refresh. Now let's actually start executing some JavaScript in here. So what's the first thing my app needs to do when I load this? Once I come here, what should I do?
Pick an answer number.
Pick an answer number. Awesome. So in here, should I use the onload event handler for the window? So after the window is officially been loaded, I can load some JavaScript in here. Let's go ahead and just do that. So window, I can add an event handler directly. So window.onload, I think it's onload. And I think that's how it goes. So onload, I'm just gonna console log page loaded just to see if that works. Oh, doesn't look like it. Onload console.log. Why not? So
I think it needs to be a function, right?
so like that looks right. Let's see. I'm not getting any errors. So if I refresh that, there we go, page loaded. Great. Thank you for that. So that's one way I can add an event handler. I can just add the onload event handler directly to the window object, which is this whole big thing right here. So once I onload, I heard, I think Michael said, I need to get a random number. So I'm just going to create a variable called let random number equals 0 for initially. I could also just have it like that, but I want it to be explicitly 0 initially. And then I'm going to create a function that picks a random number between 1 and 100. So I can say let pick random number equals, I'm going to use an arrow function or a fat arrow function. And I'm going to reassign the random number variable and create some random number in here. So how do I pick a random number? Remember? I can use the
Math.random will generate anything, a float between 0 and 1.
Okay.
And then if you want it to be between 0 and 100, you multiply it by 100 and then you floor it.
All right. So yeah, let's just see that. So I'm going to console log math.random and just so I created a function. Now I have to actually execute that function. So at the very bottom, still within the onload, I'm going to execute that pick random number function. So if I come up here, I've got this random number. So I can times it by 100 or pick random number times 100 to get to 100. So if I refresh that, if I keep refreshing, it should pick a random number between 1 and 100. But we also want to floor that. So I can do math.floor and encapsulate that so I can actually get a random number. So 92. And I believe I'm going to have to add 1 because if let's just see if I can get 20. So if I did like a for loop and ran this, 1,000 times, I think we'll go from 0 to 99. So I'll have to add 1 to actually get to get a random number between 1 and 100. So here are all of my random numbers, 65, 18, 54. So now I've got that. Now I can actually reassign that random number to whatever random number. So, and then I'm just going to return the random number variable. So now when I console log random number, let's see what happens when I refresh it. I think it should be 0 and then, so it's 0 there. But if I console log random number after I execute the pick the random number, whoop, I get 30. So there we go. So the random number is now executed. And so now I have a random number. All right. I'm gonna add that right there. So I've got a random number. Now I actually have to type something in here and extract this number 50 from this input value and store it somewhere. So how do I go about doing that? So when I click the submit button or submit number button, I want it to extract this value from this input tag and store it somewhere. So I'm just going to do document. Whoop. So I'm going to target this ID submit number. So I'm going to target this tag. So when I click this button, I want to extract this value from this input tag. So I need to target this button. So I can do document dot get element by ID. And that ID is submit number. And I can add an event listener to this button tag that's by grabbing that by targeting it via the ID, which I'm doing here, get number or document.get element by ID, submit number. So when I do an on click, and there's other ways to do it. I can literally just add event listener to that. I'm going to console log, just say clicked right here. So when I refresh that and when I click that, notice how it's I'm console logging clicked. Any questions about targeting this submit number ID, adding an on click event handler to it or event listener? And when I click it, it executes this function, this anonymous function, and it console logs click.
I saw people, at least the example that I found when I was trying to accomplish that, they put the on click in the HTML. Is this the better practice or does it matter?
So you can do that, and more likely than not, you will start doing that once we get to React. But again, I'm just going to do everything in the JavaScript just to get used to utilizing my JavaScript file to extract all the values and make any changes to my HTML, just to get used to using JavaScript to do everything. But yeah, you can definitely add an on click, something like that. I think it's like on click and some like execute some function. You can definitely do it that way as well. There's multiple ways to do it. This is just the way I'm going to do it. You can also use a form. I'm just not going to use a form just because this is the way I'm going to decide to do it. But there's definitely multiple ways to do it. If you did it inline in the HTML to execute a function, that's 100% okay as well. But again, I'm just going to just do it just so I can utilize JavaScript to manipulate everything, just to get used to manipulating the DOM using JS.
Tom, so
Yep.
you probably just said, I just want to restate this just to make sure I'm clear. Line 14 is adding an event handler. That's what we've done. And the action is on click, and the function or the handler we pass it is just that console log. It's an anonymous function. Is that what's going on there?
Yep. So I'm adding an event listener. This is an on click event listener to this this button tag. So when somebody clicks this button tag, it's going to execute this anonymous function.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I guess for some reason, the way I was doing it yesterday, I wasn't like using the dot on click. I was writing like a formal function name and then like doing something like add event listener.
Yep.
But I like the way you're doing it here because it seems a whole lot cleaner and easier than all that other stuff. So
Yep. There's
learning
multiple
something.
ways to actually like. You can also do something like this as well. Well, and have some function be essentially doing what I'm doing with that anonymous function. So yeah, there's multiple ways to do it. I like to add the on click directly to it. Yeah, but you can do it the way you did it is also totally fine and totally acceptable. All right, so I've got this on click event handler. I'm console logging clicked, but what I want to do when I click that, I want to extract the value from this input tag. So I'm just going to console log document dot get element by ID. So I'm grabbing an element by ID, and I'm going to grab the input number. So I'm just going to do that. And so I'm just console logging this input number, this input tag right here. So if I refresh that and type in 50 and submit, I get this input tag. So that's what's actually being console logged here. But I can extract the value from that by doing the dot value. So if I refresh that and type in like 55 and click submit, I can get 55 to display on the screen, or 60, or 1. I can extract the value of the number I'm guessing. So now I'm able to extract that value. I'm going to say like let guessed number. And now that guessed number equals whatever my guessed number is. So I'm going to console log, refresh to reload the JavaScript. I'm going to say it's like 88. And now I'm getting 88 displayed there. Right. So now you can add like error handling and making sure that the person actually inputted a number, but I'm not going to do any of that just for the sake of time. What should I do? Now I just need to check to see of whether or not my guess number is greater than or less than or equal to this random number. So I'm just going to console log the random number just to see if it's in scope. So refresh. I'm going to type in, 55, enter. Yes, it is. So that's the random number. So my random number is still in scope. All right. So now I can actually just check the guess number against the random number. I'm going to create a separate function for that. I'm going to call it let check number that takes in a guessed number. So whatever number I guessed. And then it's going to check against this random number. And if just random thing, if your if your fat arrow function is only taking in one parameter or one argument, you do not need to have those parentheses there, just random. No, so I can do if guess number equals random number. What do I want to do? I want to say like console log U1 else if guess number is less than random number. I'm just gonna say console log guess higher, else I can do guess lower, right? Guess lower. So now I have this function guess number. And let's see if this works. So now I'm going to, let's see what we want. Check number. So now I'm just gonna, I guess, return check number. And I'm gonna pass in the guess number. I just want to see if this works. All right, so I'm gonna do 50. Guess higher, 75. Guess lower, 63. Guess lower, I don't know, 58. Guess higher, 62. Should probably just console log the guess number. Jeez. All right, cool. So looks like the random number was 59. And with that, I'm just gonna console log the random number just so I can see it at the top anytime. So 22, if I guess 21, submit, guess higher, guess 23, guess lower. If I say guess 22, you won. All right. Does anybody see any problems with any of this? So, for example, if I just type in some words, it tells me to guess a lower number. So I guess I can do some checks. Might as well. If what do I want to check? So I can guess if it's a number, or I can.
If you put input type equals number, would that make it where they just can't type in text in the box on your HTML file?
So text for number? No, because if you do number, the reason why I never use number is because the default HTML tag for the input when it comes a number, it's not something I like to look at. It's got this thing here. And I don't like that. So I'm just going to say keep it as text. And let's see. I guess let's just actually check to see if it's a number. Let is number, guessed number dot match. This is where I'm going to use some regex. You're not expected to memorize this. I think it's something like that. So I can console log is number, and that should return a Boolean value. Let's see. So if I do that, so I guess it's null. Let's see if I do 50.
You're going to want to use test instead of match.
Oh, let's see. Test. There we go.
I always mess.
Guess number is not.
Sorry.
All right. Well, I'm just not going to do that. Don't even worry about it. Just assume that users aren't stupid and don't type in numbers.
Tom, is there?
Best practice, I think.
I mean, aside from it just being like regex, you know, the holy regex, couldn't we just create an else if for a type match?
You could do that. Definitely.
Would there be a benefit to using regex in this specific example, or is it more to future-proof us?
It's more to like to future proof it. But typically you'd probably want to match it just to ensure that only digits are input. But yeah. So hold on, let's just see something. So I've got guess number. How about I just try to convert this into a number right away? Because let's just see console log. I don't remember. Is it type of guess number? If I do 50, so it looks like it's a string. And so if I type in a string,
do you have any idea why it's still returning like guess higher or lower, even though it's not something that's like quantifiable, you know?
It is. So like guess number is so if I use like that, it's coming in here. It's saying, hey, does this string, this FDSA string equal this random number? No, it doesn't. Else is guess number less than random number? No, it's probably, that is a falsy statement. So it comes down here and this is the last else statement.
So it's just deferring to the else.
It's just
statement.
deferring
Okay.
to that. So what I'm just going to do is just to convert this guess number into a number. And I can do that a couple of ways. So I can literally say like a number and wrap that into it. And if I refresh, type in 50, now it's a number instead of it's a string. You can also, instead of using that number, you can literally just add a plus to the front of it and it will also convert it to a number. So that also converts it to a number. So I'm just going to add a plus to my input into the check number. So I'm going to actually check on the, instead of using double equals, I'm going to use triple equals. When in doubt, always use triple equals. So let's just assume that a user will always guess a number between 1 and 100. And all right. So I think everything, oh, I don't want to save that. All right, I'm going to do 50, guess higher, 65, guess lower, and 64, you won. All right, great. Now what do we want to do? Let's see. So we've got that. Actually, every time I submit a number, I want this to like 64. I want it to go back and clear this input. I can do that by running grab that value and assign it. So document get element by ID. I want that value to equal just an empty string like that. And that's reassigning that input value or just this, yeah, this input number to an empty string. So if I refresh that, and if I say, 44, so it empties it every time. It resets it to an empty input box. All right. So now, what else does it want us to do? All right. So let's actually add every guest number down here. Let's have it just display every guest number down here. So in my HTML, I'm going to add an ordered list or unordered list. An ordered list. I actually don't know. I don't remember how to create a list. How to create a list in HTML. W3 schools is great. So that's an unordered list, and this is an ordered list. So it looks something like this. There we go. I just want to see what that looks like. So I got coffee, tea, milk, but I want it to display, you know, 50, 20. So every time I wanted to add something to this ordered list or unordered list. So with that, this ordered list, I'm going to add an ID to it called number list. All right. So number list. Great. So now I need to figure out how to append or how do I create a list? Something like that with like a 50 there. When I submit, click that submit button. So this is where it kind of gets a little more difficult. So with that, so when I guess that number, I wanted to add a list element or a list tag to it. So I'm going to say like how to create a list HTML tag in JavaScript. So HTML DOM elements, creating new HTML elements are nodes. So it looks like here's a script. I create an element paragraph, a p tag, assign it to a variable, create a text node. This is new. And I append this node to this paragraph node. Okay. And then I append that paragraph node. I append it as a child element to this div1. So I just want to try that for myself. And if I run that, oh, I guess it just automatically runs it. So it just keeps adding that. All right. So I'm just going to copy this and go over to add node. So I'm just going to create a function called like let add number to list. I'm just gonna run this. So I'm going to create an element. What element do I want to create? I want to create a list element. So I'm just going to do li. So do I want to create a text node? So I don't want to add text. I want to add the number, the guest number. So maybe I'm going to just add that to add my guest number into this there. And in place of this string, add that. And instead of just calling this list node, I'm appending this list node. Wait, list node, append child node. Yep, okay. So I'm appending this guess number to that list node. So I want to add that 50 to this list, which I'm doing. And now I want to add this list as a child node to this number list. So get element by ID. I'm going to get the number list. And then I'm going to append it to, instead of para, list node. I think that's it. So now when I guess a number, I'm just going to run the add to list and guessed number. I can even add that at the very end, actually, like that. See if that works. I don't know. Maybe I'll get an error. Maybe I won't. So I'm just going to refresh. I should just have 50 here right now, just because that's what's hard coded. And I'm going to do like 75, click submit. I get 75, 89. Great. So now I've got that working now. Questions about what I just did to get that working?
Much prettier than the way I would have done it.
If you got it working, that's the first battle. All right, so now I got these console logs, but I want to display to the user whether or not. So instead of having a console log here, guess higher, you won, guess lower, I want it to display somewhere in here. And I don't know where I should do that. Please guess a number between 1 and 100. Maybe I should. I'm just gonna create another div that I can just edit. So I'm just gonna make it a paragraph tag, input number below, and click submit number. Right. And I'm gonna add an ID to that. ID is, I'm just gonna call it game action, like something I'm supposed to be doing. So input number below and click submit number. And let me get rid of that 50 as well. So I'm not guessing 50. All right. So something similar to what I'm doing here with this get element by ID, and I'm changing the value of the input number to an empty string. I can actually change that the same way to here. So I can grab the element by ID, I can grab this game action and change the, I think it's like the inner HTML or something like that. So instead of U1 being consoled, I'm going to say document dot get element by ID game action dot. If I do dot, I can see dot value, focus, style, inner HTML. So when I want to change that inner HTML, I can use that. So inner HTML equals U1. And now I can do the same thing down here. Instead of U1, guess higher. Guess lower. See if that works. So if I refresh, so looks like the input number is 1. If I do 50, or let's say like 25, it says guess lower. If I guess 0 for whatever reason, it says guess higher. And now if I do 1, it says I won. Cool. Any questions on how to essentially just what I'm doing? Get rid of those console logs.
Tom, on the function add number to list, I'm not exactly sure I'm following. Line 33, we create a variable that is holding, like we're creating a new piece of HTML that's going to be a list item, right? That's what we're doing. And we're saying that's what list node is. It's like it's going to be like a list item or something, right?
Yep. So on line 33, when I create a list node, this is exactly what I'm creating right there.
Okay. All right. So it's like literally creating that HTML tag space.
Yep. And then,
Okay.
yep, go ahead.
All right. Yeah. And then 35, then you're making another variable in your, and maybe this is where I'm getting, so maybe I'm confused here at 35 then.
So 35, I'm really creating something like, it's like a text node. It's just literally just a node. It's not like a tag or anything. It's just a text node. And I'm creating that and I'm assigning the value to that text node as my guest number. So outside, it's really creating like a guest number like 50 or something like that. But it's just called
Okay.
a
So
text
that's like
node.
the actual text that will go inside the tag then?
Correct.
Okay.
And then on line 36, I'm appending that text node to that list node. So it'll eventually look like that.
Okay. I got you. I think that's the step where I was confused. And then 37, that's when you're grabbing the order or the unordered list, I guess, in this case, and then appending that element. All right. Thank you.
Yep. So line 33 and 35 and 36, my list node should look like that. And then on line 37, I'm grabbing that unordered list. And then on line 38, I'm actually appending it as a child to this unordered list. So that's kind of like the steps that's going on there.
Thanks a ton for walking
Yeah.
through that. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And I can go ahead and console log the node as well. I forgot what it like specifically looks like. But if I type in 50, so yeah, it's just like a string. So I created that empty list and assigned that 50 to that. All right. Cool. So I kind of got the majority. This is it. This is all that needs to really be done. I could add some additional like styling to it if I won. Let's see if this actually works. So I'm just gonna copy and paste this in here. It's a number list. So if I refresh, if I click 50, if I guess 10, guess lower, if I guess 11, it appends that, makes this bigger. Why does it do 10? Shouldn't it be 11? So that's messed up there. So yeah, there's some order in which. So I'm adding, so document body style, I'm adding a background image. And I'm grabbing this URL, which is this background image. I'm grabbing the last child in there, which I guess I should maybe make this at the very top, then it'll work. Yeah, let's actually refresh, make sure it's now it works. So let's do 50, guess higher, 99, guess lower, 90. There it goes. So what I'm doing there, I'm grabbing the last child in the list, in the number list. So the last item in the list, I'm adding a font size of 80. I'm also adding a background color of red, and the actual color of the font is white. So background color is red, font 80, and the color of that font is white. So let's just make it a little more jazzed up. Questions about that part?
if you did want to do string interpolation, or I can't say the word, but
Alright.
so if you wanted to say like U1, the number was, instead of doing the decorating, is there a way to do that? Like take the guess number and actually put it within that string?
Yeah, so you can do string interpolation within where'd it go? U1. So U1, the number is, what is it? Guessed number, something like that. And so if I guessed 72, which is the guess number, it says U1, the number is 72.
Thank
Yep. All right. Let's see what else we need to do for the sake of time. We got, let's see. All right. What else do we want? Let's go ahead and add the ability for this game to remember a user. So the first time I visit this page, it doesn't know who I am. I wanted to say like, welcome Tom or something like that. So I'm going to say inside at the very top, inside the nav, I'm going to just say H1, welcome. And we should do an ID of welcome just because welcome. And if I've never been here, I want it to be able to get a username. So if the first time I'm coming here, it doesn't know who I am. So I'm going to say, I'm going to create a div and has a paragraph tag. Please enter your name. And I'm going to have an input tag with an ID of like username and placeholder like username or something. And also I'm going to have a button to submit that username button, submit username. And I'm going to have an ID of literally submit username. So the first time I get here, it says welcome, empty person. When I type in like Tom, I click submit username. I want it to say welcome Tom. So just like kind of how I was doing here, like manipulating everything, I can do the same thing down here. So I want to document.getElement by ID and submit username. I'm going to add an on click that is an anonymous function that's going to extract the username from this input value. So let username equals document dot get element by ID, the username dot value, and I'm just gonna console log username just to make sure I'm able to grab that username from here. So I'm gonna say Tom, submit username, I get Tom right here. But right now, I also want to grab, so when I click submit username, I want it to say welcome Tom up here. So once I submit my username, I can say, you know, document dot get element by ID. I want to grab the welcome, this thing right here, and dot inner HTML. And this is where, oh, not inner text, inner HTML equals I'm going to do that string interpolation. Welcome username. And also what I want to do is once I submit my username, I don't want to be able to submit another username. So I'm going to actually remove something. So I'm going to remove like this part of the DOM. So I want to remove this stuff. So I'm going to do an ID. This is get username part of it. So let's actually just kind of look at what that looks like right now. So if I do Tom, I submit it, it says welcome Tom, but now I actually want to remove this part of the DOM. So I can say document dot get element by ID, get username. I can literally just remove that entire DOM element. So I can say Tom and submit, and there it's done. Any questions about grabbing a username and having it display and removing that? Pretty straightforward. But now when I come back, I want it to remember me. So I want it to say welcome Tom. But when every time I refresh, it's like I'm new here. With that, that's where like local storage comes in. So what I want to do when I first get a username, I want to store that username into local storage. And then, so what is local storage? So if I clear, if I type in local storage like that, I get a storage object that doesn't have anything stored in it. But if I want to store something into local storage, I can do store local storage, set item, and set item local storage. I can set like username followed by the value. It's local storage looks like an object. It goes by key value. So now if I look at local storage now, I have a key of username and a value of Tom. So what I can do when I visit this and type in Tom and submit username, I can access the local storage in here. I can access local storage by typing local storage dot set item username. So instead of here, I can actually do local storage dot set item username comma username like that. If I ever wanted to clear local storage, so right here, local storage, if I wanted to clear it, I can do local storage dot clear, and that will delete everything in local storage. So see how local storage is now empty. But let's just check right now. So I'm grabbing local storage, I'm setting an item. The key of that is username, and the value is this username that I'm from the input. So if I refresh that, I can say Tom, submit username. And now if I look in local storage, I have Tom right there. So if I local storage dot clear, if I refresh that, type in local storage, there's nothing stored in there. If I want it to be Susan and submit there, now I can check local storage again, and there's Susan stored in there. So, but when I refresh it, I still lose my username. So maybe I should see something, I should check in local storage to see if something exists. So I can say let does user exist. And I'm going to execute this function. I'm going to say if local storage dot get item. So get item is another method to I can grab values on it. So does local storage dot get item exist? If there isn't a username in there, this is where, or no, if it does exist, this is where I can get the item get the user from the local storage and set it to all this stuff. So with that, let's see. So if I do local storage dot get item user name, it's Susan. So if Susan exists, then I can come down here, bring this down here. Instead of welcome, I can do local storage, welcome Susan. And then also I can remove that username. Else, I can grab that element by ID. Yeah, I think that's it. All right. So let's see. I'm going to execute this does user exist at the very bottom. So when I loads, it's going to come in here, check to see if that username exists in local storage. If it does, it's going to change that welcome to welcome, and it's going to grab that username from the local storage, and then it's going to remove the input stuff. Else, I guess, let's actually move this down here. Let's just see what that looks like. Else, it's not going to do anything. So if I refresh that, see now it just says welcome Susan every single time. If I clear local storage, not clear, and now I refresh it, it says welcome. Now if I do like, Kevin and click submit, nothing happens, but if I refresh it, it says welcome Kevin. So when I submit it, I wanted to update it. So what I'm going to do is after I set it to local storage, I wanted to check again if the user exists. So I'm going to do local storage dot clear. So there's nobody in local storage. Now I'm going to say, Tom, submit, welcome Tom. And now every time I refresh it, Tom exists. Questions about local storage? Yep, no. So let's just quickly review that one more time. Local storage, I'm just going to clear it. So the first time I come here, I refresh it, comes into here. Does the user exist? Comes up here. Does local storage username? Is there a username in local storage? If there is, it's going to, so let's just check local storage. It does not exist in there. So it doesn't do anything. So that's why this is being displayed. But then I click Tom, I click submit username. So I click Tom. So get element by ID on click. I clicked it, grab Tom from the input value. Here's the username. I went into my local storage, I set the item with a key of username and the value of that input. So I can check right here, local storage, there's username Tom, that's what's happening right here. And then I'm running, does user exist, comes up in here, checks if the username exists in local storage now it does. So it grabs, it adds the welcome Tom, which I'm extracting from local storage right here. And then I'm also removing the input values. All right. With that, I'm going to